The reason I'm telling you this story is because at this point in your life, you're probably going through something where the only reason you're in that situation, the only reason you feel stuck is because you have been making choices based on other people's opinions of you. You have been chasing other people's approval. Now, in my case, this had a lot to do with my career. I grew up in a household where it was very expected of me that I would have a certain career path. My parents really wanted me to become a doctor. And every time I tell this story, people are like, oh, are your parents doctors? No, they're not doctors. They just really wanted their children to be doctors. And so they basically positioned us so that we would get very good grades. They invested a lot of time and attention and money into making sure that we performed well academically. They even offered to pay for our college educations, but it was all under this assumption that very quickly turned into a pressure that we would become doctors. So much so that even though they offered to pay for college, when it became clear that I didn't want to be a doctor, they decided to not pay for me to go to college. And so there was just this heavy expectation that in order to be supported in certain ways, in order to get help with certain things, I would have to go down the path that my parents wanted me to go down. And this led me to have a deep need for validation and approval from others, because I had it in my head that if you don't do what people approve of you, you won't get support. You won't get love, you won't get, validation and praise, and no one will be happy with you. And I kind of got it in my head that no matter what I do, it's only valuable and important if someone else thinks it's valuable and important. And I'm not saying any of this to blame my parents, because they had their own trauma too, and we're all on our journey of learning how to be human and learning how to interact with each other. Once I had a therapist say, we're all just trying to be seen and heard and to figure out how to see and hear. And that's truly how I feel. So I'm not saying this to blame people or to talk bad about my family. I'm really just saying this to say, if you have a need for validation, so much so that you feel pressure to not make your own choices and you feel like you have to fit into this box that someone else has told you you need to be in, the first thing you need to do is really figure out why. Like, where did that come from? And is there anyone that you need to potentially forgive? Because I had to really forgive my parents for putting that amount of pressure on me. I had to come to a place of having empathy for them and realizing that, they put that amount of pressure on me because they felt so much pressure themselves. And, I'm not saying this was overnight. This took years, literal years. I'm 28 now, and I'm talking about things that happened in my late teens. So years to forgive. But I came to the point where I had empathy for my parents and I let them off the hook. And in letting them off the hook, that let me off the hook to say, hey, you know what? I understand that for a long time I felt like I had to be approved of and I had to do what other people thought was right for me. But at this point in my journey, I recognize that whenever anyone puts pressure on me to act a certain way or to go on a certain path in life, they're only putting that amount of pressure on me because they feel under pressure themselves. They themselves have not processed fully what it means to live a full and expansive and fulfilling life, and they're just doing the best they can based on what they know. And so I can take this with a grain of salt, I can take this but not internalize it, and I can still go out and make my own choices. And ultimately that's what I ended up having to do, right? I declared the major that I wanted to study in school, had no idea what kind of job I was going to get, which of course you can imagine my parents loved that, but I had no idea what job I was going to get. I took the first job that was handed to me because I was so scared of being unemployed. This was all in my head of I did the wrong thing, I threw away my future, so I have to take whatever crumbs society gives me because I've already messed up so badly. And this was just where my head was at. And again, it's all stemming from this place of I don't have approval from people, and so that means there's something wrong with me. And so from that place of scarcity and self-deprecation, I took whatever first job I could get because I was just so afraid to graduate unemployed. I really did not resonate with that job, as you can imagine when you just take the first job that you get. it was not a job that was fulfilling. I wasn't learning the kinds of skills I wanted to learn. And if anything, I would say that job gave me a lot of clarity on what I didn't want. But then again, I still had to practice my muscle of like making the choices that I wanted to make, even if people didn't understand or didn't approve. So, as is kind of frowned upon sometimes, I left that job before I had been there for a full year. So first choice I had to make was, I'm going to decide what I study in college. I'm going to choose my major based on what I'm interested in, what I'm passionate about. I'm just going to read what I want to read and write what I want to write, and my major is going to be what I want to study, right? So that was the first one. I had to be willing to walk away from that job when I realized that it wasn't the job for me, even though there was some fear of like, oh, but will it be hard to get another job if I've left so early and all this stuff. But again, just letting go of that need to be perfect and to be approved of all the time and just being willing to follow my heart. So I followed that and went to grad school because I remembered being fulfilled and liking school once I actually got the major that I wanted to get and once I actually studied the classes I wanted to study. So I was like, okay, I liked school, let's do that again. And it occurred to me while I was in school that this wasn't the place for me either. I didn't want to be in academia. I didn't want to get a PhD. I didn't even want to get a master's. Like, I really was not interested in grad school, but it was important for me to start to see my own processes, right? And to learn, like, okay, all I can do is go off of what was fulfilling for me in the past, so I'm going to take a step in the right direction. So definitely don't regret that. But I did a year of that and was like, this isn't for me either. And so I left without finishing the program. And again, that's something that not a lot of people would approve of. A lot of people would say that was a bad idea. My parents definitely said that was a bad idea and would say that today, right? Like, but that wasn't my path. And again, just going back to like, I did not need approval in order to survive, it turned out, and I didn't even need approval really for anything. I was gradually just getting better and better at making choices for myself and not for anyone else. So I chose to leave school, but I didn't leave with no plan. So when I declared my major and was like, I'm not going to study medicine, I'm going to study something else, I didn't know what I wanted to do for a career. At this point, I did know what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to have a spiritual healing business because going on my own journey of spiritual healing was exactly what helped me get to this place of being able to stand up for myself and to make my own choices. And so I knew that I wanted to have a business in the spiritual healing, coaching, spiritual support field, right? Because that was what had made the biggest difference for me. Now, I had no business experience. I was 23. And that doesn't mean anything because there are 23-year-olds who are absolutely crushing it at business, but my life path had not led me to understand anything about business, about marketing, but I knew I really wanted to help people, and I knew that I had a message that I wanted to share, and I knew that I had become really good at holding space for difficult emotions because I had done that so much for myself, and I also knew that I was the kind of friend that people would always come to for advice. And even while I was in the midst of making a bunch of choices that I was like, no one would approve of this and no one would agree with this, my friends who knew that I was quitting jobs here and there and leaving my degree program would still be asking me for advice about their lives. And so I knew that I was onto something moving in this direction, and it felt like I had a gift in this area. And so during the pandemic, I decided to just start my own business. I started out pretty small, but it ended up picking up quickly. And for me, I let that mean that I didn't have to be in school, that being in school was not actually getting me any closer to being on my path, and that I needed to follow what my heart was confirming for me. And for the first time in my life, I had a sense of purpose and direction, but I only got that sense of purpose and direction because I decided to not chase people's approval, because I decided to do things that people definitely would not approve of, especially the way I grew up, and because I decided to really just be my own person, right? And in deciding to be judged and to be disliked and to have everyone tell me everything I was doing wrong, I also opened myself up to a place where I can do incredible good in the world. And over the course of having this business, it's been 5 years, I've been able to help hundreds of clients. I have been able to make so much money. It's a 6-figure business now. And I was able to do all of that because I let myself just be that person who people were talking about. Be that person in the family who people were like, what's going on with them and why are they doing that? I was willing to be that person. I was willing to be the one that no one really approved of, or that people were wondering kind of like what happened. Well, this is what happened, and I'm so proud of what happened, and I'm so grateful that this happened. And at the end of the day, these are the same people who are like, oh, you have your own business, oh, that's so cool, oh, you're an entrepreneur. And it's like, yeah, and I had to let go of you, and not to let go of you as a person, but to let go of your opinion of me in order to be this like cool entrepreneur who's helping all these hundreds of people that I am today. And so the reason I'm telling you this story is because at this point in your life, you're probably going through something where the only reason you're in that situation, the only reason you feel stuck, is because you have been making choices based on other people's opinions of you. You have been chasing other people's approval. And as soon as you realize whoever it is that you're trying to please, and once you can forgive that person, let that person off the hook, you can start making choices for you, and you can start living for yourself. And what's on the other side of that is literally incredible. I don't know what it's specifically going to be for you. Maybe it will be a business, maybe it'll be a relationship, maybe it'll be all kinds of things, but you have to learn how to accept yourself and live your life for you, and that is going to open up a world of opportunities. All right, I love you so much, and I'll see you again really soon in another video. Take care.